So there's no need to take extensive notes because you'll have the slides, and if all goes to plan, you'll also have this this screencast type thing. So some people brought it in their laptops, and I hope they managed to install RStudio. There's one or two people who emailed me saying they have problems. If you don't have a desktop, you don't, or a laptop, you don't need one. You'll just boot one of the PCs. They all have RStudio, and you'll be able to run it that way. But some people might prefer to work on their own machine, so that's why I told you to install it. Out of interest, people who managed to install it on their laptop. Okay, no major difficulties. Good. So what we'll do is part of it will be in duos, and then I'll ask you to sit with either somebody with a laptop if you prefer that, or to form a group and work on the desktop for the interactive bit where you fill in bits and bobs. Yeah. If it's not viewable from the back, you can. I will aim to upload the slides 24 hours beforehand, and it's like an HTML slideshow, so you'll be able to click through it on your computer if you can't see it at the back. So lecture 1, advanced quantitative research methods, and that's already not working. There should be a figure there. Let's see what went wrong. So I tried to make it interactive, so it downloads images from the internet, but that presumes I have internet in this room. So we'll see how it goes.
Sorry, I got that
No.
lost.
If you just sign in your name. Let's just see how this goes. So I might switch it over during the break and use the desktop, so you will have some of the slides, but it doesn't really matter that much. Are you here for advanced?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Good. So the goal is that I teach you a little bit about scientific computing and about using statistics, and we'll use Markdown, R, and if you want to, you'll use notebooks, which is a more advanced way of doing things, or RStudio. I'll teach you today. I'll try to teach you today some of the. We'll go through some of the basic statistics, and then we'll move to more advanced statistics like multi-level models, structured equation models, the more complex, fancy things you might have come across in journals. If I speak very fast, do interrupt me because I have a tendency to do so. Okay, and so these are the goals of our module. So we want you to be able to formulate balanced judgments with regard to complex, incomplete, or sensitive, ambiguous or sensitive data. We want you to be able to contribute to new knowledge and practical application of a new discipline with a critical understanding. So this is some type of fluffy words to some degree, but it's basically we want you to be able to apply and understand data, which is part of many applications in psychology. We also want you to use a variety of techniques, advanced research methods, and technological skills applicable in psychological inquiry. So that's probably the bulk of what we want to do. And that's, if that forbidden goes away, that's Dutch, by the way. So you want to apply relevant ethical, legal, and professional practice frameworks, e.g. BPS, and maintain appropriate professional boundaries. I don't know how the professional boundaries play in, but it's basically about correctly reporting statistics. So part of the assignments will also be, you'll get a test and you report as you would do it in a journal. And that's what we want to achieve. So that when you go on and do a research project with a supervisor, or you go on and do a PhD, or you go on and work for a company, you sort of know what the correct way of reporting a t-test is and ANOVA, those types of things. Okay. It is slow. Okay. We'll see how well it does. And, I tried it yesterday. It worked really well. So bring your laptop to class if you want to. but only use it for relevant stuff. So I don't expect you to be doing Facebook or Twitter stuff. And so if you have your laptop, it's to view the lectures and to look up things for class-related stuff. And so you have access to the course manual. Is everybody on Blackboard, or are people not on Blackboard? Did you manage to have a read through the course manual? Any burning questions based on that? So all the information you can read there. So the information on the assignments, the information on timetabling, information on additional resources, all that information is in there. You also have a reading list from the psychology, like from the Northumbria Library reading lists, and that's linked to also the Blackboard module. So I have not said a handbook, but if you really want a handbook, I've listed some handbooks in there which have some additional information. And at the end of every lecture, I'll put in some references where you can look up additional information. So I expect you to be on time, and I expect you to attend. And the reason I ask is because it's cumulative. So if you have to miss a lecture, do let me know in advance, and I'll try and get you the slides. But I expect you to work through the slides on your own. And the problem is with statistics, it's sort of built, so we just do some things in the beginning, we'll do more advanced things at the end. So if you miss things in between, it might become more and more difficult for you to complete the assignments and to do the parts. So that's why it's good to attend, because you'll do in class some of the exercises already. And when you're here, I hope that you're engaged and you're asking questions and doing things. So for questions on the assignments, that was also listed in the course manual. I won't answer any questions on the assignments in class, because if somebody misses out, they'll miss out on information. It's a little bit unfair. So if you have a question specifically on assignments, you will have seen in the discussion board I've made two things already for like questions on the assignments and more general questions. So if you have any type of question about the assignment, you can post it there. And there will be an exercise after each that should say lecture rather than assignment, after each lecture, and that will allow you to train what you should apply in your assignment. So basically, if you've been to class and you've done part of the assignments after the lectures, you'll have no problem with completing the graded assignments. So that's the setup. So there's nothing new or hidden or anything in there. So you should be able to complete with everything you've had there. Just also for the question on the assignments, I won't give you the answer in the sense you have to tell me what the problem is and I'll tell you where to look, but I just won't give you a piece of code which will run and then you will have the results. So because that's not the goal of the exercise, I hope you understand. So it's the goal that you learn where to find information, where to solve it, and I'm not sure if you had a look at the assignments already. So I've posted one assignment, which is, and I'll post the second one. So that I have to tell you with a caveat. So that assignment is there, but pending approval from the second examiner. So it's already been judged by the internal examiner, but the external examiner might still have some comments. I don't predict there will be any comments, but you will have an idea of the type of assignment it will be. And I predict that within 2-3 weeks' time, I will be able to say this is the final version of the assignments. But you can definitely start completing. I don't predict major changes. There will be perhaps slight grammatical issues or some other tiny things, but I don't predict there will be major changes to the overall tone of the assignments. And so you might have seen it's quite a long assignment, but it has all different things which are graded separately. So each assignment is a total of 100 marks, and you can just, if you really get stuck, then you can just complete the bits which you can complete, and you will definitely be able to get a passable mark. So there are easier and harder things in the assignment, and so if you think, I've had it with this R thing and really don't want to do it anymore, just pick and choose the things you are able to complete, and you should be able to get a passable mark that way. Yeah. So if you really struggle with regression, but you're really good with correlation, then just complete the bits on correlation, and you should be able to still do quite well if you have a couple of those in your assignment. Yeah. So and that will sum to 100. So theoretically, because statistically you could get 100 out of 100. That's also quite nice. So if you do everything correctly, you could get 100. So. And so if you want to talk to me about something outside of class, again, I won't be answering one-to-one questions about your assignment, but if you need help with your statistics for a different research project or some other things, or you have general comments on the class, class or something else is bothering you, you can make an appointment with me. I prefer if you do it via email, but you might also drop by. I'm in Coco, you know where Coco is, so I'm NB165, and you can send me an email for an appointment, and usually within a week I should be able to accommodate you. So those are the general things on housekeeping. So the title is fall off, unfortunately, every single time, and it's because the screen is squashed. So I hoped for a higher resolution, but so the bit you care about most, marks, which I've told you a little bit about before. So it's 50% for each assignment, so 2 assignments, it will sum to a total. You have the deadlines in your overall course manual, and also on Blackboard if I Turnitin, you will see the deadlines. So you see Turnitin as well as the briefs, and so it's 1 p.m. Initially, I'm not sure if you saw it, initially I put 5 p.m., but it's faculty-wide 1 p.m. for, and it's always on Friday, if I'm not mistaken, the deadlines. It's graded via rubrics, so because it's statistics, you won't get extensive feedback on your writing. It will just, and most of the things are 2 marks. It will be 0, 1, 2, and it will say you got 0 marks because it should be an APA formulation. You got 0 marks because the number is wrong. So it will be quite straightforward for you to understand. So it will be graded via rubrics, and you will get feedback via Turnitin. But obviously, if you have questions, you can come and find me afterwards. Any questions so far on how it works? So you've done all Turnitin assignments before for your degree. You've also received feedback via Turnitin. So I think that should be in line with what you had before. So I'm not sure if you already saw, but I created an empty script, a .rmd, and what that is you'll see later. And so basically, what will happen is you will put in bits of codes and bits of text, and you will turn that into a PDF, which you will hand in as via Turnitin. So I've given you the raw skeleton of it, and I say this is 2 marks, this is 1 mark, this is 2 marks. Most of it is actually 2 marks. And you will put in pieces of code which will run and will generate some type of results, or you will put in pieces of text saying this regression shows a significant effect of X, Y, Z. And those are the things that you will complete, and then you will press a button in R and will make an HTML page, which you can save as a PDF, or a PDF if you installed something which is called MacText on a Mac, or Text Live if you're on Unix, and MicText if you're on Windows. So all these PCs, they have the capacity to generate PDFs from the click of the button. But if you just install R in RStudio, you will be able to make HTML pages, but you won't be able to make PDFs unless you install that additional software. But I can tell you how to do that if you want it straight away. But it's equally fine to just make a web page and then turn that web page into a PDF. But you have to submit a PDF in the end, because that's what Turnitin wants as format. Next from that, you also have to include a screenshot with all the files, just to avoid that somebody's really good at statistics here and does everything, and then passes around a PDF, or you all add the names or pass around the script. So when you make this assignment, it will generate outputs in a folder, and you will take a screenshot of that folder, so I can sort of see that it has the data files and the outputs that you generated as part of the assignment. And so everybody knows how to make a screenshot. So it's print screen on a PC, and it's Shift Command 3 if you're on a Mac. And if not, Google how to make a screenshot, or use your phone in a worst case scenario to take a really low res image of your screen. Okay. So every single time at the end of the lecture, and you should have already seen that there's an exercise at the end of this lecture, and I'll talk to you a little bit about at the end. You will see under study skills how to like an assignment, and if you do all those assignments, that will prepare you for all those exercises. You'll be able to do the assignment. And so questions on the assignments via the e-learning environments, so via Blackboards. But I will ask you to, if you've completed the actual exercise, because many of the things you might run into are in the exercise. So if you haven't done that, my first response will be, have you tried completing the exercise? I hope that makes sense, because there's little value in me just giving you the answer, giving you some code, or giving you some bits and bobs. So I will check that, or I will check either because you will, at the end of the exercise, upload a PDF, and I'll see what has happened, and then we can talk about things that might have gone wrong. But that will be the sort of bottleneck before you are able to ask a question more in depth about the assignment. Yeah? So I can't see the title, but let's see what gives. So why R? So most of you are familiar perhaps with Excel and SPSS from your undergraduates, but R actually has quite some benefits and quite some few reasons to change to R, because you might think it's a little bit weird to shift halfway through, but it will make it easier for you to do repetitive tasks. So I'm not sure how much time you've wasted on making really pretty APA tables, make them look nice in your Word documents. But if you have to do a lot of those, this will make it actually easier, because it will make an HTML table, or it will make a formatted table which you can just drag into your report. So especially some of the work you'll do also later, regardless of whether you work in a company or you become a scientist, will be repetitive tasks, like you take some data, you make a correlation table, and if you have to do that via Excel or SPSS, it involves a lot of copy and pasting between programs and a lot of manual editing, like doing those type of things. So the nice thing is, once you have a working script, sometimes you can also do that with SPSS, once you have a working script or working syntax, whichever data you will then get, if it's in the same type of format, it will automatically generate a report for you, so you don't have to go through the motions of the oceans of like clicking all the buttons in SPSS and copying and pasting all the output. So that's why you want to use it. Also, R is maintained by statisticians and computer scientists, and not like IBM. So IBM is the program, or the people who make SPSS. There used to be some statisticians working for IBM, but it's not at the forefront of statistical science, so that's why we also prefer R. The other reason might be somewhat more basic. Some things, if you wanted to do it in SPSS, you would have to buy a different package in order to do it. So if you wanted to do structural equation model, you would have to buy SPSS AMOS, or you would have to buy a separate package in order to be able to do that. With R, that doesn't happen, because you can just download all the packages, and everything is free. So everything is open source and free. So that means that after you leave here at Northumbria, if you go to a different university, you would be dependent on whether they have SPSS, or you would be dependent on whether, same if you go to a company, if they don't have SPSS, but if they use SAS or they use Minitab or something, you are stuck. And so here with R, that's not an issue. Like R has been going for 10 years, and it's always been open and free, and so that will continue to happen. So RStudio is desktop is also open source. If you use it for commercial applications, so if you build an app or something, then it's sort of gray area on where it works. But for your own private use and for your educational use, it's completely free to use as well. And again, that's quite well maintained. And unlike IBM SPSS, or unlike SAS, this will always be the case. So the other thing which might not be fun is that, unlike SPSS, there's very little buttons to click, so you will actually have to think about what you're doing. So rather than trying a bunch of things and seeing what the output looks like and seeing if you get stars for significance with p-values, you would actually have to think about the type of test you want to run and actually run the output. So it forces you to think about what you're doing. And if something doesn't work the way you like, you can change it. So several people have written their own package because they were unhappy with how something was implemented. Or if you have to do something repetitively, they write a function which will do it 10,000 times because they don't want to push a button 10,000 times. So that's the nice things which also are a benefit of R. It has an active help community, so I'm not sure if you ever tried to figure out help with SPSS, but it's not that easy. But if you go to Stack Overflow, let's see if I can get on the internet here. I think that's the problem, that I'm not on the web. So if you go to stackoverflow.com, so that's basically a place where people ask questions about programming languages. So people ask questions about Python, people ask questions about Java, C++, and there's a very large active help community on stackoverflow.com. And I'll see during the break if I can bring it up and show it to you. So it means that if you run into a certain type of error or mistake, likely somebody else will have run that. So the way I find out things, if things don't work, is I go on Stack Overflow and find out this plot doesn't render correctly, how do I fix it? And then you look at what other people have found and then try and solve it that way. And many companies actually rely on R. So Facebook, Google, Shell, Thomas Cook, they all rely on R for some of their backends. So for some of their statistical computing or data mining, they rely on R. R works quite well with very large databases. Later today, perhaps we will still work with some databases, if not next week. So database of 300,000 cases are not an issue necessarily with R. Up to a million cannot be an issue with R. Like really large databases, it's not that big a deal for R. Whereas with some of the SPSS programs, you'll run into memory limits and all sorts of other things. Some newspapers also rely on R to make really pretty graphics, and so part of what I hope to teach you is also to make some really pretty charts, to put in your reports, and to make some really nice visualizations of data. Any questions so far? All convinced, or are you still like, I wish I had SPSS, but no? Okay. So there are some downsides. So R can be, but that's in comparison to real programming language. So R is a slightly different programming language. It's built on the S language. Later this year, you'll be working with Chris, and he'll be teaching you Python, which is another programming language. And Python beats R in a couple of in fastness. So if you have to have, like, unlikely for you, but if you have to do millions and millions of calculations within really fast time, then it becomes really an issue of how fast you can do calculations. And for some tasks, R will be slower because it's set up because it doesn't talk directly to. Now it becomes really technical. It doesn't really talk directly to kernels or to cores, so it becomes quite trickier to do lots of tasks, partition them, do all the computations, get all the results, and combine them. That's how it's set up. But it will still beat SPSS comfortably if you have to do like bootstrapping. Any of you know what bootstrapping is? So bootstrapping is usually when we resample a statistic. So we want to do the same statistic thousands and thousands of times. So you can get a confidence interval. You can either calculate a confidence interval by making z-scores and seeing how wide it is, or you can ask the computer to take resamples from the original data and build a confidence interval that way. And you can do that 10,000, 100,000 times, and then get some idea of uncertainty in your data. And there is no GUI, which means there's no pointy-clicky thing. So there are little buttons to press. You actually have to write code in order to get things done. But RStudio is already somewhat intermediate because if you've opened it, it has some buttons and some things which look familiar. But if you only use R, like the language, like there are no buttons to press in order to get tasks to run. And you might not like that because you're used to working with Excel, working with SPSS, where there are buttons to press. Any questions thus far? So, before we move to R, that will also give me some time to work out what is going on with my display. We're going to go and learn something else, which is Markdown. Markdown is a very easy formatting language for marking your scripts because RStudio doesn't work like Word. So it means if you want something italicized, you have to use code in order to change that. And it's actually relatively straightforward. So I suggest you work in pairs of two. And you go to www.markdowntutorial.com, and then do a work through this tutorial. And you'll see it's an interactive tutorial where you will find out how Markdown works. And Markdown is basically just a way of getting normal text to look like text in Word. So making things bold, making things italic. And then in the meanwhile, I'm going to see if I can get this shifted. Okay? And if you don't have a thing, just put on a PC and log in.